Joining me now live over Zoom is the Chair of Emergency Medicine at UPMC, Dr. Don Yealy. Thank you for joining us, Doctor. What does your experience, maybe your gut, tell you about this Friday night trip from the White House to Walter Reed?
Well, it tells me that the president clearly is symptomatic. In other words, he's not one of the people who has COVID-19 with no knowledge of it. He has both symptoms and a positive test. And since he is beginning some very new therapy, I would presume that the reason he's being placed in the hospital is for very close monitoring of that therapy, not necessarily because he is sicker than what we might presume to believe.
Well, it's been about 18 hours, if my math is correct, since the president learned of his positive COVID test. For someone to go from testing positive, we assume he was tested negative a day earlier. He says he's tested every day. To go from a positive test to being symptomatic to being placed in the hospital in such a short period of time, what does that mean to you?
Well, it may mean a few things. It may mean that he had fairly rapid progression of his symptoms, even if those symptoms are mild. But as I talked about before, he's been given a newer therapy that's not widely available or widely studied, and transferring him to the hospital may allow much more closer monitoring of that therapy. It may not be indicative that he actually is sicker than we expected.
The White House says he was given an 8-gram dose of Regeneron's polyclonal antibodies. What does that mean?
Well, as we all get more mature, our immune response isn't as robust as it was when we were younger. And this new agent is intended to either augment or help improve upon his immune response to the virus. And that's the dose that obviously the investigators and the manufacturer think might be optimal. What's key to recognize here is we don't know a lot about this particular agent yet. It's still in the early phases of study, and the president is just availing himself to that opportunity. If it works well, it will help together with his body fight off the infection.
Is this the right time for that? In other words, from what you understand about this antibody cocktail, is it most effectively given to a patient at this early point in the illness?
Well, we think that any immune response is most effective before you begin to have very severe symptoms and organ failure. And this particular antibody, while not particularly well studied, clearly would be most effective in the early stages of the disease, whether it's these particular symptoms or slightly more symptoms. I can't know yet because of the agent being fairly new. What you would not want to do is wait until things were very, very serious. That's when we use other agents that help dampen the immune system down, things like steroids that you've heard of.
Dr. Yealy, knowing that he had been in close contact with someone who ended up testing positive for COVID, his close aide Hope Hicks, the president nonetheless went to a fundraiser at his golf club in New Jersey yesterday. There was an indoor roundtable, and then there was some outdoor meet and greets, about 100 people. Some people who were there said the president seemed lethargic. I want to know your opinion of the decision by the White House to send the president to that event. Maybe it was the president's own decision, knowing that he was positive for COVID.
Well, many people either know or are unaware that they've come in contact with someone who has COVID-19. And even those people who have COVID-19, it depends on what type of test they've had. No matter whether you know or not, what's imperative is asking, do I feel well? And if I'm not feeling well, it makes sense to stay home or at least stay away from crowds. And number two, if you do go out, you have to use this protection, the mask. The virus spreads from close contact. It does not travel great distances. It needs close contact, and particularly if you're indoors. So if you were making a decision to go and have further business activities, professional activities, I'd want to make sure I kept the distance and protected those and myself with masking. I don't know whether the president did that or not, but that's the kind of advice I'd be giving him if he was considering a day earlier continuing on with presidential activities.
Your advice sounds a little more nuanced than what the CDC says, right? The CDC guideline, I believe, is that if you are known to have been in close contact with someone known to be COVID positive, you should self-quarantine.
What they recommend is that you quickly get an assessment for whether or not you have any symptoms, a test usually within a few days and limit your contact among them. And it really depends on what the amount of that contact was with the person who is known to be positive. And I don't have the details to be able to comment on how much contact. We all have the opportunity to come in peripheral contact with folks who may have the COVID-19 virus. That wouldn't be grounds necessarily for quarantining everyone. Until I know a little bit more about exactly what type of contact the president had with the infected party, it's hard to comment more on whether or not any activities were wise.
Understood. Fair enough. Dr. Don Yealy, Chair of Emergency Medicine at UPMC. Appreciate your insight. Thank you, Doctor.